it
reading
was a
that.
great piece. Yeah,
It was a
I mean, yeah,
really well
yeah,
reported piece.
yeah.
It's something that we're going to frankly revisit a couple times this season because I think it has huge implications. Like does it lead to a breakout? I wrote that piece around. I think that the Trump administration is really just not fond of large international presences at universities. And if you look at the SEC schools, by and large, they tend to be 10% or less international enrolled, right? Students, they really feel like American institutions. We've seen things written about they want to diversify where research occurs, right? Have them at different campuses, different ideas, and things like that. I get some of that, and I don't know that this is going to lead to sort of the reordering that people think it will.
Yeah.
But there's other wrinkles on this, right, Jeff? There was also then the executive order on
Oh,
admissions
yeah.
that
Yeah, another
right.
crazy executive order. I mean, I don't even know what number we're up to now. There must be hundreds, right, of executive
Well, there should
orders,
be a
right?
ticker. Well, there should be a
There
ticker,
should
but
be a
we're not going
ticker
to run that.
somewhere,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But President Trump ordered the Education Department to require all colleges in the federal aid programs to submit detailed, like applicant level admissions data that would include race, it would include gender, SAT scores, GPAs of students, both those who were accepted and those who were rejected. Now,
Mm.
what's important to remember, we just talked about these Columbia and Brown deals.
Yeah.
It was part of that. So basically, they're just extending that to everybody now. Colleges, as we know, already submit reams of data to the federal government as a condition of getting federal aid. Much of that data makes its way to the College Navigator website from the Education Department. All of that data then gets uploaded to these various rankings. Like everybody uses this data. I'm actually thinking some of this data is pretty good to have. I mean, we should know by race and ethnicity, like who is getting accepted and who is getting rejected. It's not a bad number to know. But the reason why the administration is pushing for this because it believes that elite colleges and universities continue to use race in admissions, and they're obviously outlawed from doing that from the 2023 Supreme Court decision. Now, of course, for the most part, most institutions are not considering race because they're not selective. So they don't really need to in any way. This is obviously going to pull all of them together, whether they are selective or not. So it's going to put another burden on colleges and universities. And what's interesting to me is Robert Kelchen asked the question, like, who's actually going to like analyze this data or look at it? Because there's like 4 people left in the education department. So I guess we'll know that someday. But I think what's more important here is that last year in the aftermath of the Supreme Court decision, you know, students don't have to list their race and ethnicity on a college application. And in fact, last year, a lot fewer of them did list their race and ethnicity. So we may want this information. We may not just be able to get it because increasingly they're kind of checking unknown as a result. So I don't know how much in the end the EO will have that many teeth to it in order to do anything.
Yeah, I mean, I get the impulse to your point, and like, I don't know. There's a weird irony of we don't want to consider race, so let's tell us your race, right? Like in numbers. There's a weird irony in all that. But the other thing that you said that I think is interesting is this impacts relatively few institutions. And that's the question before we leave this topic that I want to ask you, which is there's a lot of ink being spilled around higher ed. Most of it is focusing on the selective institutions that admit fewer than 20% of applicants. And I know from your upcoming book, we should get a sound effect for this, like book alert, book alert.
Yeah.
Michael P., you can edit that back in later. But Dream School, your book coming out, students at those schools admit fewer than 20% of applicants in the US account for roughly 100,000 students total, which is a tiny fraction of the more than 15 million undergrads. So my question, Jeff, is do we just continue to make too big a deal of these schools? Or are we missing the big picture?
Well, Michael, I do believe we are, but I'm not sure how you break it. It's like saying your Celtics, right, don't matter in the NBA. It's like my Yankees don't matter in baseball. It's like the Cowboys, America's team, don't matter in the NFL. It's just like, we have to get Taylor Swift in here somehow,
Yeah, go
right?
for it.
Could come back from this like long vacation she took after her Eras tour and literally in 24 hours suck up all the oxygen in the room. Like what a marketing machine she is, right? So these elite schools do the same in our collective culture. And there's one data point from the book that I think is pretty critical here. I did a survey of more than 3,000 parents for the book. Only 16% of parents in my survey said it was important to them that their children attend a prestigious college. 27% said it was important to their children. But then we asked how they thought others in their community would choose. And that's where it got really interesting. 61% thought prestige was important to other parents, right? It's how, so in other words, even if you don't care about prestige, you think it matters to other parents.
Yeah.
And so you're jumping through those hoops as a result. And like, how do you do that? And it was interesting. I was talking to a college president yesterday who has a lot of Harvard connections, no longer at Harvard. And he said, I actually think at the institution I'm at right now, we provide a better undergraduate education than Harvard, but nobody will listen to that. And I said, well, why don't you say that more often? And he's like, well, I can't because, all my community and all my friends, they all went to Harvard. And so we can't criticize Harvard in that way. Like, it's a cultural phenomenon that's really hard to break.
Yeah, well, it gets a little bit into a few things. One is this belief in the academy that because you're doing the cutting edge research, therefore your teaching is the best, right? And I think that is true in a certain circumstance, but it is not a universal truth, if that makes sense, right? To your point. I think also, the research we tend to obsess over the research-based institutions. Yeah, I think that has some reason to it. I think it has some reason, in terms of, you said the 2 lottery tickets versus 1,
Yep.
right? I think is the way you phrased it in your book. If you go to an Ivy Plus institution, we're going to get more into that when we talk about your book, Dream School, in our next episode. Get it now, pre-order if you're listening to this, but there are reasons for that as well. But I think what you're right is, yes, it's way overhyped, but it speaks to sort of the way the media works also. And, Taylor Swift, if you're listening next time, you're welcome to come on our podcast instead of the Kelsey brothers. But I think let's maybe leave it there, Jeff, for the moment. Let's actually turn perhaps to coverage of other schools. Let's walk the walk, if you will, and get to some of the issues impacting all of them when we come back. But first, a word from our sponsor, Ascendium, on Future You.